The movie opens with a deeply unsettling and perplexing scene. Sarah, one of the main characters, awakens in an unfamiliar room, finding herself in an agonizing and bizarre situation. As she gains consciousness, she feels the weight of another body beneath her and turns to discover a strange man sharing the bed with her. The shock of this revelation is overwhelming, and as she attempts to rise, she's gripped by excruciating pain and realizes she's unable to move freely. At the same moment, the man awakens, experiencing a similar agony. Together, they inspect the source of their pain and discover a blood-stained surgical gauze between them. Further examination reveals a horrifying truth. Their bodies have been surgically stitched together, causing the unbearable pain they experience upon movement. In a state of confusion and distrust, Sarah questions the man, demanding to know his identity and why they are in this horrifying condition. The man, equally bewildered, insists he knows nothing about their predicament. Sarah, however, finds it hard to believe him, suspecting him to be responsible for their situation. Temporarily setting aside their attempts to physically separate due to the intense pain, Sarah and the man, who introduces himself as David, begin to explore their surroundings as best as they can from their confined position. They find themselves in a locked room, with no clues about their location. Desperate for answers, they start to share details about their lives in the hope of finding a connection. Sarah reveals she is a 33-year-old married woman working in a clothing store, while David, 38, is an orphan who works at a port and is unmarried. Their conversation turns to their last memories before waking up in this nightmarish scenario. Sarah recalls being on her way to meet her husband after receiving his call, but can't remember anything beyond that. David shares a similar blackout in his memory, having been on his way to a date with no recollection of what followed. As they talk, Sarah feels cold and remarks on the fact that at least her earrings were left with her. However, upon closer inspection, she realizes the earrings are not hers and throws them to the ground in frustration. In the midst of their confusion, David finds a remote-like object and quickly takes it from Sarah. He speculates they are being watched and starts scanning the room for hidden cameras, explaining that such vigilance is part of his job. Sarah, still reeling from the shock and trying to piece together their circumstances, questions how David knows this, hinting at the deepening mystery of their situation. The narrative progresses with David proposing an attempt to stand up, driven by his intense thirst. Their initial effort to rise from the bed ends in failure as they fall to the ground. Undeterred, they try again, this time starting from a seated position. With careful coordination and mutual support, they manage to stand up, although awkwardly balancing their joined bodies. Gradually, they manage to move together, reaching a table where David pours himself some water. Sarah, hoping to call for help, picks up a phone but quickly realizes it's futile as there are no signals. In desperation, she drags David to the door, shouting for help. David tries to calm her, but Sarah, overwhelmed by fear and confusion, lashes out, accusing him of possibly being a creep since neither of them can recall the events that led to their current state. Despite his assurances that he's not capable of such an act, she insists on using the bathroom, leading to an embarrassing and challenging situation given their physical connection. After the humiliating experience in the bathroom, they find themselves standing in front of the vanity mirror, unsure of their next move. The lights suddenly go out, plunging them into darkness and heightening Sarah's distress. When the lights come back on, Sarah notices a bottle of medicine on the counter that wasn't there before. David remains silent but observes a bruise on Sarah's shoulder. Sarah, struggling with a headache, takes a painkiller with David's assistance. They then return to the bed to rest, still trying to come to terms with their bizarre and frightening situation. Determined to understand what's happening to them, they get up from the bed to search the room more thoroughly. David retrieves the earrings that Sarah had thrown away and investigates a cabinet under the table. His adeptness in handling the situation raises Sarah's suspicions about his background, leading her to question his occupation again. David remains focused on his task, ignoring her inquiries as he finally manages to open the cabinet. Inside, they discover two Bibles. One Bible contains a highlighted verse, while the other holds a photograph of a woman named Rita who is wearing the same earrings Sarah had earlier. Both Sarah and David deny knowing the woman in the photo, but they recognize the location depicted. Sarah recalls having been there and even taking a picture at the same spot. David also remembers visiting the place, a memory that stands out due to his strong dislike for the flight. This revelation adds another layer of mystery to their already perplexing and dire situation. Sarah and David, bound together in a perplexing and terrifying situation, continue to explore their confined space for clues. Sarah suggests they examine the two paintings in the room, leading to the unsettling discovery of a hidden camera behind one of them. David surmises that there are likely more hidden devices in the room, suggesting they are under constant surveillance. In a moment of desperation, Sarah picks up the phone again, hoping it might work this time. As she holds the phone, she suddenly freezes, piecing together the clues they've found. She reveals to David her fear that her husband, Morris, is responsible for their nightmare. David, concerned for her well-being, takes her to the bed to calm her and asks her to explain her reasoning. Sarah elaborates that everything in the room, including the paintings, the Bibles, and even themselves, are in pairs, aligning with her husband's obsession with the number 2 as a scientist. She confesses that Morris is suspicious and believes she has been unfaithful, though she adamantly denies ever cheating on him. David nods, understanding how the evidence seems to point to Morris. However, tensions rise as Sarah accuses David of blaming her for their predicament, leading to a heated argument. Eventually, they agree to focus on finding a way out. They check the door, only to realize it can only be opened from the outside. Their attempt to escape through the window also proves futile, and in a moment of darkness and rising tension, they share a passionate kiss, which Sarah abruptly stops. David then proposes a drastic measure, attempting to untie their stitches. Sarah retrieves a piece of equipment with a blade and begins the excruciating process. The pain, however, becomes unbearable, forcing them to stop. Turning their attention back to the phone, which now has a signal, Sarah answers a call. The voice on the other end chillingly inquires if they find the room comfortable. Sarah is left speechless, shocked by the voice she hears. David, taking the phone from her, unleashes a torrent of insults at the caller, only to be hung up on. Sarah, shaken, tells David that the voice on the phone may not belong to her husband, as it sounds unfamiliar to her. David tries to comfort her, and they return to the bed to continue their conversation, still trapped in their harrowing ordeal, grappling with the mystery of their captor's identity. The plot continues to thicken as Sarah shares details about her husband's behavior in their first meeting with David. As she speaks, David is struck by a sudden recollection. He urgently sits up on the bed and inquires about the appearance of Sarah's husband. She describes him as an older man with gray hair and a beard. This description resonates with David, who vividly recalls a recent encounter with a man fitting that description. He reveals to Sarah that just 2 days ago, he had made an agreement with a man resembling her husband to sleep with his wife in exchange for money. Sarah is devastated and angered by David's revelation. She feels betrayed and starts to cry, deeply hurt by David's selfish actions. David, looking remorseful, attempts to justify his behavior by mentioning the financial burdens he faces, including numerous loans. Amidst this tense conversation, the lights in the room flicker off and then back on. When the lights return, they notice a box on the table. Bravely, David opens it to discover it contains food. Despite Sarah's suspicions about the food's safety, David, driven by hunger, starts eating it. Sarah, curious and concerned, asks him how he knew about the hidden cameras in the room. David chillingly confesses that he uses cameras to secretly record his encounters with women for blackmail purposes. Sarah is appalled by this revelation, accusing him of being complicit with her husband's scheme. As emotions run high, David manages to calm Sarah, and they once again find themselves drawn to each other, sharing a kiss. Notably, the lights go off again during their intimate moment, leading Sarah to speculate that whoever put them in this situation might be displeased by their affection, as this is the second time the lights have gone off during such moments. Ignoring this, David continues to kiss her, and they become intimate. However, their moment is abruptly interrupted when an older man enters the room and orders them to stop. Completely absorbed in their passion, they ignore his demands and inadvertently push him away with their leg. The man stumbles and hits his head on a corner counter, falling unconscious to the ground. Shocked by the noise, Sarah and David come to their senses and find the old man lying motionless. Startled, David asks Sarah if the man is her husband, but she confirms he is not. Realizing the door is now open, they seize the opportunity to escape their confinement. Desperate to find a way out, they leave the room, stepping into the unknown and leaving behind the strange and perplexing circumstances that have entrapped them. Soon after, Sarah and David, stitched together and desperate for escape, find themselves facing another deceitful obstacle. The door they believed would lead them to freedom turns out to be a mere facade, a false door leading nowhere. Undeterred, they try another door and find themselves in a different room. Here, they come across magazines pinned to the wall, which reveal a shocking truth. One magazine features a photo of the woman named Rita, with headlines proclaiming the birth of conjoined twins of different genders, a first of its kind in the world. As they read further, another magazine reveals that Rita died during childbirth, and her husband, the father of the twins, succumbed to schizophrenia. The article also mentions that the twins were medically separated. As Sarah turns away from the wall, she notices her gun lying on a nearby chair, prompting David to question why she had a gun on her when she was supposed to meet her husband. Their exploration leads them to a grim discovery, a dead body on the floor. Sarah identifies the corpse as Mario, her husband, deepening the mystery. David, suspicious, questions if Sarah is responsible for Mario's death, but their attention is diverted when the old man, who had previously interrupted them, emerges from another room. In a shocking confession, he reveals that he killed Mario and then makes a startling claim. He is their father and orchestrated this twisted reunion to bring them together as they were in childhood. Sarah and David are horrified to realize that they are the separated twins mentioned in the magazines. The tension escalates as Sarah points the gun at her psychologically disturbed father. In a chaotic struggle, a bullet accidentally hits David's leg. Amidst his pain, David implores Sarah to sever their surgical connection. Braving the excruciating pain, Sarah cuts the stitches, freeing them from their physical bond. She then opens the door and steps out into the cold, desolate world. In the final scene, David, left alone in the room with their father, picks up the gun and fatally shoots him in the head. He then collapses on the floor, overwhelmed by pain and awaiting the end of his life. Meanwhile, Sarah, unable to continue her journey, collapses in the snow outside. The movie concludes with both siblings lying separately, each facing the grim reality of their situation, bringing the story to a haunting and tragic end. Did this story spook you out? Let us know in the comments below. For more horror movie recaps, subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next one. Fear awaits you.